You slip beneath your blanket. The edges cool against your skin. A faint hum of distant waves rolling in your mind already. Hey there. Tonight we drift into a world that sparkles at the surface, but hides a chill so deep you'd feel it right in your bones. This isn't the grand movie romance. No sweeping strings. No valiant hero at the bow. Tonight you'll step aboard the RMS Titanic, the so-called unsinkable ship, as just another passenger. No fame. No spotlight. Just you, a name on the manifest. A breath among thousands carried by cold winds across the North Atlantic. So before you lean all the way in, maybe tap subscribe if you liked drifting through the past this way. And tell me where you're listening from and the time. It's always a small comfort to see sleepy souls from every corner of the world. Now, maybe you dim the lights, pull the blanket up to your shoulders. Let your room grow as hushed as the deep. Hear the distant creak of ship beams settling. Feel the chill, the hum of ocean currents moving under you. You don't begin in the grand suite. No polished wood or crystal chandeliers yet. Instead, your eyes open to the hush of your cabin, a small second-class berth, not quite third class, not quite the lavish suites you've read about in the papers. Just enough space to stretch your legs if you don't mind the faint creak of the bunk above. Air is colder than you expected. The gentle pulse of the Atlantic presses against the steel hull. You draw in a breath. It smells of varnished wood, iron bolts, and a hint of stale sea damp. Your blanket, scratchy wool, not silk, slips from your shoulder. You hear the muffled shuffle of boots in the corridor. Crew members making their rounds. A whisper of conversations in a dozen accents. Irish, English, French, German. It's a floating city. But in the hush of this hour, it feels more like a sleeping beast. You shift under the blanket. Feel the slight dip in your mattress, where so many other passengers have curled up the night before. Above you, the thin walls groan, a distant thud of coal being shoveled into the furnaces. Always hungry. Always burning, driving this massive ship forward at a speed that makes you wonder if man's pride could ever outrun nature. You reach for the small porthole. Its glass shivers with the night wind. Through it, you catch the faint glint of moonlight on black water. So calm, but you know somewhere deep down how cold that water is. Your berth is modest, a narrow iron bed frame, a single lamp, the kind that flickers with every shudder of the ship. No room service at this hour, no orchestras playing for you here. Yet just a few decks above, others sip champagne, laugh into the smoky lounge air. Wrapped in furs and pearls. It's strange how close you are to that luxury, yet how far. You imagine walking the grand staircase, that oak and wrought iron marvel. But tonight your feet stay, planted in your cabin slippers, on the linoleum floor, cold to the touch. There's a faint hum of the engines beneath you, a heartbeat that never stops. It thrums through the mattress. Finds your spine, settles there. You shift. Listen to the soft snore of your cabin neighbor, a young Irishman bound for America. He mumbles something in his sleep, perhaps a prayer or the name of a girl left behind. You roll onto your side. Your eyes drift to your suitcase, a battered leather piece tied with twine. Inside, a single spare shirt, a small tin of biscuits. Your ticket to a new life. If the ocean allows, you wonder, will you dine at the second-class dining saloon tomorrow? Eggs, toast, maybe a slice of ham, quite fine compared to what you left behind. But here, in this thin-walled berth, it feels like you're closer to the freezing deep than any grand promise. A G-U-S-T rattles the porthole. You pull your blanket tighter. Try to ignore the cold. The way it seeps through steel and wool alike above. The wealthy sleep in feather beds, their trunks brimming with silk dresses and tailored suits. First class, second class, third class, the ship is a floating city of invisible lines. You're learning where you stand, even as you drift toward sleep. You press your palm against the wall. Feel the endless Atlantic pressing back. A vast, frozen wilderness just inches away, and you warm enough for now, yet always shivering inside. Outside your door, a steward hums a tune under his breath. Soft reminder that dawn will come soon, that the boilers will roar again, that the decks will bustle with footsteps, laughter, secrets. But for now, it's just you. The gentle sway of the sea, the muffled creaks and sighs of the Titanic carrying you toward an uncertain horizon. So close your eyes. Listen for the echoes of footsteps on polished decks. The distant rustle of silk gowns, the hush of ocean winds slipping through the rigging. Tomorrow, you'll rise into the corridors of privilege and peril. But tonight, let the hush of the ship cradle you. As you drift just above the icy deep, unaware that beneath the calm, a jagged crown of ice waits in the darkness ahead. Just breathe. Listen. Let the hum of this floating palace rock you gently into sleep. You stir before the sun, still wrapped in your wool blanket. A rough scratch along your chin where the fibers bunch up. The faint hum of the engines hasn't stopped once. A steady promise that you're moving forward. West, always west. Even as the world outside your porthole is endless, black and cold. You shift your legs, feeling the lumps of the thin mattress. Straw or horsehair stuffing, stiff in places where it's been pressed down by other travelers before you. Your toes find the edge of the blanket, only to brush against the chill iron footboard. A small shiver curls up your spine. Not the same warmth you imagined when you bought your ticket. There's the sound again. Booted footsteps along the corridor. A steward knocks gently on a neighbor's door. You hear a muffled reply, a woman's voice, still thick with sleep, asking what time it is. You rub your eyes, grainy with leftover dreams of home. Home feels far away now. You breathe in. The air carries a tang of oil from the ships. Boilers, mixed with damp wood, metal polish, and the faint, salty smell seeping through the hull. A faint rattling comes from your small wash basin. An iron pitcher sits on its side, never quite steady on the shelf. You swing your legs over. The side of the bed, your feet find the linoleum floor, cold as the steel plates below it. It wakes you more than any splash of water could. Your fingers run over your face, stubble rough against your palm. The razor in your kit feels heavy for its size, bone handle. A bit dull. No time to fuss today. You'll stand in line for a turn at the communal washroom. You grab your small towel, threadbare in spots. Your mother stitched your initials at the corner, more out of habit than pride. You slip on your shoes. They've grown stiff in the damp. The leather creasing at your heel. No warm slippers or plush robe here. Up in first class, you imagine. The stewards glide in, deliver hot water, press a fresh morning paper into gentle hands. Down here, it's a shuffle to the shared sink, soap slipping into the basin, cold water that shocks your skin awake. You reach for the porthole. A squeak. As you turn the latch, it won't open, of course, but you peer through the glass. A smear of condensation distorts the endless horizon. A pale gray dawn is trying to break through, but clouds hang thick, heavy with the cold. You wonder how far you are from land, farther than your heart wants to know. You stand, feeling the floor tilt under your weight. Just a slight roll dot. The Titanic is so massive you'd almost forget you're at sea. But your stomach reminds you when you sway just enough to feel the engines thrum through your legs. You pull on your shirt, the collar's stiff where it hasn't dried properly. Your cuffs rub at your wrists, a small itch that will grow the longer you wear it. Your trousers feel snug from last night's damp. Salt air has a way of seeping into every seam, every fold. Through the thin wall, you hear your bunkmate coughing, the young Irishman again. A sharp bark of a cough, then a sniffle, a reminder. You're all breathing the same stale air down here. No ocean breeze can cut through the cabins of second class. You lean against the small dresser. Its single drawer sticks when you pull it open. Inside, a comb with 2 missing teeth, a pair of socks you'll need to mend soon, and a half-finished letter you keep meaning to finish, but your mind drifts every time you try. What do you tell the ones waiting for you back home? That you sleep below men in tuxedos and women in silk gowns? That you stand in line for lukewarm water while they sip tea poured from silver pots? A faint knock startles you. A steward's voice, low but polite. Breakfast will be served in the saloon shortly, sir. You mutter a reply, something grateful enough. You're grateful, truly. Grateful for eggs, maybe bacon, a slice of bread, better than the stale scraps you'd find back home. Still, you can't help but think of the spread laid out in first class. Oysters, fresh fruit, smoked fish on porcelain plates, a crisp white tablecloth under crystal glasses. You gather your few things, comb, razor, towel. You tuck the half-finished letter back into the dresser. It can wait. The Atlantic won't wait. Neither will the engines, or the coal burning like a heartbeat far below your feet. You slip into the narrow corridor. It smells of varnish and fresh paint, a mask for the ocean damp that clings to your sleeves. You nod to another passenger, a young woman clutching a shawl, hair pinned hastily, eyes still glazed with sleep. She smiles, but it doesn't reach her eyes. There's a shared look between you, a quiet understanding that all of you are closer to the freezing deep than you'd like to admit. Further down the corridor, you pass a small sign reminding passengers to wash before meals. Luxury for some, a chore for you. The communal washroom door creaks open. Inside, rows of simple porcelain basins. A cracked mirror hanging crooked on the wall. Someone hums an old tune in a language you can't quite place. A pair of children bicker softly as they fight for a spot at the sink. You wait your turn. When you finally lean over the basin, the tap screeches as you force the handle. Cold water gushes out, splashes your shirt front. You hiss at the shock, splashing your face anyway. Better awake than drifting, you think. Your reflection stares back, ghost-like in the cracked glass. Eyes puffy, hair stubbornly curling at the edges from the damp dot you run the comb through. catching on a small tangle. You sigh, working it loose. No barber for you this morning. The engines pulse beneath you, steady as your own heart. Somewhere far down in the bowels of this floating palace, men shovel coal without pause, their sweat dripping onto steel floors as they feed the boilers that keep you moving, keep you warm, keep the promise of New York alive. You splash one more handful of water on your cheeks. The cold makes you gasp, a tiny shiver that will cling to you all day. The children laugh behind you, small bursts of noise that feel oddly comforting. You offer a tired smile. The mother hushes them with a gentle scold, but you hear the affection in her voice. You dry your face with the scratchy towel, the threads rough against your raw skin. One last look in the mirror, a nod to the ghost staring back. You're ready, or as ready as you'll ever be, to face another day on the ship that boasts she can't be sunk. Stepping back into the corridor, you feel the floor hum with life. Voices rise behind closed doors. The shuffle of slippers and boots. Above you, sunlight tries to filter down through layers of steel, brass, and mahogany. But here in the belly of the Titanic, you greet the new day with cold water and borrowed courage. You reach for the stair. Rail, its brass surface is cold but steady under your fingers. You take a breath, feel the ocean sway under your feet. Up there, they wake in feather beds. Down here, you wake with the Atlantic whispering through thin steel walls. But for now, your eyes blink against the dim light. Your feet shuffle forward. You walk on toward breakfast, toward chatter and clinking cutlery, toward a new day drifting ever closer to that distant frozen horizon. Sleep will return tonight if the ice doesn't find you first. You step from the dim corridor into a gentle hush of morning voices. Your shoes tap softly on the linoleum as you shuffle toward the communal washroom door. A last splash of cold water clings to your hairline, trickling down the back of your neck, a little bite of cold that lingers even as you breathe the faint warmth of this early hour. Out in the hallway, you catch the murmur of families waking. A father calls to his boy in a language you can't quite place. Two women speak, in hushed tones, passing a single comb between them. You catch a glimpse of well-worn shoes, frayed hems, and the smell of soap that can't quite wash away the sea-damp dot. Your first small task is simple enough. Check your ticket stub. It's tucked safe in your coat pocket. You run your fingers over the folded paper, thin, creased at the edges, a bit damp from your restless night. That slip of paper is all that holds you here. A passage from old dreams to new. You head for the stairwell. The rail is polished brass, cold under your palm. It hums faintly with the heartbeat of the engines below. You move slowly, careful not to slip. A boy rushes past, nearly knocking your elbow. You glimpse his mother scold him in a thick brogue. They're Irish, maybe County Mayo. The boy ducks his head, cheeks pink, hair uncombed. You reach the second-class promenade deck. A steward stands nearby, hands clasped behind his back. His eyes drift over you, noting your plain coat, your damp collar. He nods politely, but you feel the invisible line that holds you back from stepping further up. To first-class decks, those wide planks of polished wood where the wealthy stroll under fur blankets. The deck air cuts sharper than the hallway. You step closer to the rail. bracing against the chill. Salt wind scrapes your face, makes your eyes water. Out there, the horizon is a dull smear. No land, just rolling gray and blue. The occasional gull wheeling in the sky. You watch the ship's massive smokestacks push trails of coal smoke into the open air. Each plume drifts behind, a black ribbon carried eastward, back to where you came from. You pull your coat tighter. Your breath fogs the air as you look down. Far below, the ocean peeks through gaps in the rail, a never-ending hush of waves slapping the hull. A steward clears his throat behind you. "Breakfast soon, sir," he says, voice polite but distant. You nod. Stepping back, the brass door clicks shut behind you. As you return to your next small morning task, you find the small laundry area. Rows of passengers stand waiting their turn to wash a shirt, rinse a collar, scrub mud from the hem of a skirt. A woman near you rubs a handkerchief along a washboard, knuckles raw, humming under her breath. You join the queue. Your own shirt draped over your arm, a faint stain from yesterday's supper you'd rather not carry into the day dot when your turn comes. You dip the cloth in the cold water basin, your fingers ache as you rub soap into the fabric. A young man next to you mutters about the chill. You exchange a thin smile, both too tired to talk much more. Water drips down your wrist, soaks your cuff. You don't mind a small discomfort that reminds you you're alive, awake, at sea. Finished. You wring the cloth out, drape it over a line near the warm boiler room vents. It might dry by evening if you're lucky. If not, you'll wear it damp, the chill clinging to your skin, tracing your spine. The corridor fills with more footsteps now. You hear the faint trill of a bell calling passengers to the second-class dining saloon. You tuck your hands into your coat pockets, rubbing your fingers together to chase off the cold. You take a moment to look at the other faces shuffling past. Most wear the same look, hopeful, exhausted, polite enough to nod but too shy to speak. You catch snippets of talk. A boy who dreams of Chicago. A young woman bragging of an uncle waiting at Ellis Island. Grandmother worrying over a trunk of linens stowed somewhere deep in the hold. You step aside as a steward wheels a cart piled with linen napkins and silver cutlery. A small luxury, polished forks and clean napkins done up in first class. They won't give it a thought. Down here, you glance twice at the shine. A man brushes past you, the scent of pipe tobacco trailing behind. He looks over his shoulder, making sure you're not too close. Your coat, your collar, your shoes say enough about your place. Titanic, even the air feels divided. You pause by a small porthole. Wipe the glass with your sleeve. Cold air ghosts over your fingertips as you peer out. The Atlantic rolls on, wide and indifferent. The sun is a pale smear through thick clouds, barely warming the deck. Your stomach tightens with a quiet rumble. Breakfast calls you forward, but you linger. Your eyes drift over the endless water, the misty horizon. You wonder what your mother would think if she could see you here, standing on a ship so grand it brags it can never sink. Behind you, the corridor door swings open. The hum of the ship echoes back in. Your shoulder brushes a brass rail. You steady yourself, feeling the ship's gentle sway under your feet. Steward appears again, clearing his throat. "Time for the saloon, sir. Best get in before the crowd." You nod, stepping away from the porthole, fingers lingering for a moment on the cold glass. The horizon slips out of view. The Atlantic keeps its secrets for now. You shuffle down the passageway, the smell of fresh bread and fried eggs drifting from the galley below. You think of the coal stokers far beneath you, sweating by the furnaces. You think of the orchestra, tuning their instruments for the fine people above. You think of the lifeboats, covered, quiet, waiting on the deck above. And you wonder, in some small part of your mind, if you'll ever touch one. But the thought drifts away as the ship hums under you, steel and steam, carrying you forward into a morning that feels colder than it should be. You slip your hands back into your pockets, step toward the saloon door, and the hush of your chores fades behind you, swallowed by the hum of the unsinkable giant beneath your feet. You shuffle down the narrow passage, footsteps muffled by the thin runner carpet laid over iron plates. You pass other passengers, eyes down, hands tucked into coat pockets, each one nursing the same half-hunger that pulled you from bed. A quiet procession, like pilgrims moving toward the smell of fried eggs and fresh bread. Your stomach rumbles, a small ache that reminds you haven't eaten since that meager supper the night before. One slice of bread, a smear of jam, a pale soup that tasted mostly of water and salt. Better than nothing, you remind yourself, but nowhere near what they promise in the fancy brochures about Titanic's grand dining dot. The dining saloon is plain but bright. Brass fittings, wooden beams overhead, long rows of simple tables bolted to the deck. You feel the hum of the ship through the soles of your shoes as you find a seat, a bench polished by so many restless bodies. You squeeze in beside a young woman, her shawl wrapped tight, eyes still puffy with sleep, and across from an older man who chews his pipe stem, even though there's no tobacco allowed inside. A steward, all crisp sleeves and quick glances, moves along the row. Plates clink gently as he sets them down. Nothing fancy, just thick white crockery chipped at the edges. Your eyes follow his tray, fried eggs, maybe a rasher of bacon, if you're lucky, a slice of bread already cold to the touch, and a tin cup of tea that steams just enough to warm your hands. You reach for the bread first. It's coarse, thick, the crust a little stale. You tear a piece, the crumb clings to your fingertips. When you bite down, it tastes faintly of the ship's air, coal smoke, salt, and that lingering sense of damp that never leaves the lower decks. The tea soothes your throat. It's weak, the color just shy of gray, but it slides down warm dot. You hold the cup in both hands, fingers wrapping around the dented tin, letting the heat soak into your bones. Beside you, the young woman picks at her egg with a blunt fork. She glances at you, offers the ghost of a smile. You nod back, but neither of you says much. There's something about the early hour, the hush of plates and clink of cutlery, that keeps words tucked tight in your chest. You listen instead to the low murmur of stewards moving between tables, to the soft clatter of a dropped knife, to the occasional scrape of a boot heel on iron deck plates. Somewhere far above, you imagine the first-class dining room, gilded columns, crisp linen cloths, waiters gliding like dancers with silver trays piled high, smoked fish, fresh fruit, fluffy omelets, maybe even champagne if they're feeling indulgent. Down here, you have cold toast and weak tea. But you tell yourself it's enough. You have a seat. You have food. You have the promise that by week's end, your feet will touch a new shore. You glance at the older man across from you. He dips his crust in the runny yolk, his hands working slow, methodical, as if each bite must last him the whole day. A gold band on his finger flashes when it catches the light, a reminder that he left someone behind, just as you did. A cough rises at the end of the table. A child, maybe 6, maybe younger, curls into his mother's side, spoon clutched in his small hand, eyes half closed. His mother hushes him with a stroke of her hand through his hair. A small piece of bacon, already half cold, sits on his plate, untouched. Dot. You tear another bit of bread. Chew slowly. Dot. It sticks to your teeth, your tongue. The stewards pass by with another pot of tea. They refill the cup without looking you in the eye, already moving on to the next bench before your thank you leaves your lips. Woman across the aisle stirs a spoonful of sugar into her cup. You envy the way her shoulders relax as the sweetness settles on her tongue. Your own tea is plain. Dot. No sugar left by the time. They reached your table. Someone near you mutters about the cold. A draft slips under the doors each time they swing open, letting in a sliver of Atlantic chill that tickles your ankles under the table. You pull your coat tighter around your shoulders. Feel the rough collar rub at your neck. You think for a moment of how it must feel to sit above this, on the upper decks where the china is finer, the bread soft and warm, the butter spread thick across delicate slices. You imagine the soft rustle of silk gowns, the polite laughter, the clink of crystal glasses. Dot. And then you look down at your tin cup, its dented side, your thumb pressed against the rim, and you let that daydream drift away. A steward's voice breaks your thoughts. Anything more for you, sir? You almost laugh. There's nothing more. Not really. You shake your head, murmuring a soft thanks. Dot. Your stomach tightens at the thought of more bread, dry, stale, tasteless, but better that than nothing at all. You wipe your fingertips on the cloth napkin, its edges are frayed, the linen thin where countless hands have used it before. You fold it carefully, as if your mother were watching. Respect the meal, even when the meal doesn't respect you back. The hum of the engines seems louder now, vibrating up through the deck, rattling the plates ever so slightly. You wonder about the kitchens below, the cooks sweating over stoves, stirring vast vats of porridge, cracking eggs by the dozen. Somewhere, someone's job is to carry sacks of flour up from storage through corridors that run dark and damp, far below the luxury staterooms. You think of the men shoveling coal, their breakfast even more meager than yours, eaten in snatches between shifts at the furnace doors. You lift your cup, drain the last sip of lukewarm tea, the metal tasting faintly of rust where the enamel is chipped, a soft scrape of benches, and you stand. The young woman at your side slips away, shawl wrapped around her shoulders like a fragile shell. You watch her go, her steps careful along the deck as she clutches her small tin cup, hoping to sneak one last sip before the steward notices. You gather your things, your coat, your ticket stub, the folded napkin that feels like paper in your hand. A small burp of hunger rises again. It. We'll stay there until lunch, or until you forget it in the swirl of fresh air and the soft lull of the ocean's hum. Outside the dining saloon, you pause by a window. Your reflection stares back, pale, tired, but somehow steadier than the night before. You press your fingertips to the cold glass. Feel the Atlantic pressing back. Somewhere far below, an iceberg drifts unseen. Up here. The tea cools on your tongue. Your hunger settles, not gone, but waiting, like the sea itself. You step out from the dining saloon, your stomach a little fuller, but still restless. A steward nods at you as you pass. The quiet brush of his sleeve against your coat reminds you where you stand. Not quite a guest, not quite crew. Somewhere in between, where small chores make the hours pass. You pull your coat tighter around you. The corridor walls are warm near the galley. But a few steps later, a cold breath slides under the door to the outer deck. You slip through, boots thumping lightly on the wooden planks, your breath hanging in the Atlantic wind. Your first small job this morning. Fetch fresh water for your berth. You carry a dented tin pail in your hand. The handle squeaks with each step. You like this task. In a way, it gives you a reason to wonder. You pass rows of other passengers doing the same. Men, boys, a few sharp-eyed mothers with small children trailing behind, each one clutching a battered pail or jug. You reach the shared tap, a narrow metal pipe fitted near a stairwell, where the crew checks that ice hasn't blocked the flow. You wait your turn, pail resting at your feet. The man ahead of you, young, freckles across his nose, nods without speaking. His boots tap the deck in a restless shuffle. When he's done, he steps aside with a muttered word that might be thanks. You bend, the cold water gushing in, splashing your knuckles. The metal pail grows heavy, water sloshing as you lift it. You breathe slow. Your shoulder twinges where you slept wrong on the hard berth last night. That you carry the weight back through the corridor, careful not to spill. A bump against your knee sends a drop rolling over your trousers, cold as the ocean itself. At your berth. You pour a little into the cracked wash basin. You splash your face again, letting the chill wake you fully. A tiny mirror nailed to the wall shows your reflection. Hair damp, cheeks pink, eyes rimmed with the shadow of a night's half-sleep. You run a finger over your jaw, feel the stubble prickling through. No time for a proper shave. Not with your next task waiting. You gather your coat, your cap, your gloves if you have them, thin wool, threadbare at the fingertips. Someone at the door calls for help. A young lad needs extra hands bringing a crate up from storage. You nod. Better to move than stand idle. Down the narrow stairs you go, deeper into the belly of the ship. The air shifts here, warmer, thicker with the smell of coal, smoke, and damp wood. You pass men in shirt sleeves, sweat darkening their collars. One hums a tune under his breath, some folk song from home. The tune carries you down the corridor, guiding you to the storage hold. You find the crate, rough planks bound with rope. Inside, bottles of water, some dried goods, a few tins of milk for the babies in steerage. You grip the rope handles, heave it up with the other lad's help. The wood scrapes your forearm, a splinter digs in deep. You wince, but you don't let go. Step by step, you climb back up. You feel the ship's heartbeat, the faint, constant shudder of the engines, the occasional groan of steel plates flexing against the Atlantic swell. The lad jokes that this ship is a palace that floats, but in this moment, with your back straining and your palms raw, it feels more like a giant you must feed. You reach the top of the stairwell, shoulders aching. A steward gestures to the pantry. You set the crate down, wipe your brow with your sleeve. The sweat chills instantly, a cold bite at the back of your neck. Someone laughs behind you. A cluster of young men gather by the crew door, swapping gossip about the first-class deck. They speak of a lady in furs who tipped a steward a shiny coin just for bringing extra toast. You can't help but smile, but it fades quick. Your work earns you no silver coin. Just a nod, a half cup of tea. If you're lucky, you head back toward the outer deck. Fresh air fills your lungs, clears the stuffiness of the hold. Your next small job. Help stoke the stove in the shared sitting room, not the mighty furnaces deep. Below, you're no cold trimmer, but just enough to keep a few dozen passengers from freezing as the Atlantic wind grows meaner. You pass a steward by the doorway. He hands you a small sack of coal, barely enough to warm your palms. You kneel by the tiny stove, open the iron door with a groan of hinges. Inside. The embers glow faintly orange. You feed them small lumps, careful not to scatter ash onto your coat. The warmth seeps into your fingers, loosening the stiff ache in your knuckles. For a moment you imagine staying here, just you and the glow. The hum of voices drifting around you like smoke. But a mother appears at your side, baby on her hip, eyes wide and tired. She holds out her hands, pale from the cold. You shift aside, let her feel the warmth too. Behind you, another man coughs. The damp air settles heavy in his chest. You think about the rumors you've heard, how sickness can spread in these tight quarters, how cold lungs invite worse troubles. You tap the stove door shut, watch the mother smile her thanks. Someone calls your name, you rise, brush the soot from your coat. There's always another small thing to do, a leaking pipe in the corridor. You help wrap it with old cloth to keep the drip from turning the walkway slick. A loose crate that needs steadying so it doesn't slide. When the ship pitches. Tiny labors, each one harmless alone, but together they fill your hours and remind you of the thin line that keeps you busy and keeps you small. You pause by an outer hatch, crack it open just wide enough to steal a breath of the sea. Cold wind knifes in, sharper than the warm glow behind you. You see the deck, lifeboats, resting above, canvas covers pulled tight. You wonder if they're enough, if they'd hold your weight, your mother's weight, the old man's pipe and the baby's tiny hands. But the thought drifts away on the wind. Your shoulder twinges. Again, as you shut the hatch, the hush of the ship folds around you like a blanket that never quite warms your bones. You step back into the corridor, the warm hush of the stove lingering on your skin. Behind you, the sitting room crackles with hushed conversations and the faint clink of cups. Ahead of you, the passage bends left, then right, always narrow, always lined with the hush of boots moving quickly. Eyes down. Your feet carry you toward the open stairwell, a chance to glimpse the world a deck above. You climb slow, the wooden rail cool under your palm. Halfway up, you pause. A steward stands at the top, polished shoes planted wide, arms folded over a starched vest. His eyes flick over you, your scuffed boots, your frayed coat. He says nothing, but you read the rules in his silence. Stay where you belong. Don't linger too long. You nod. Step aside to let a lady pass. She floats by, her skirt brushing your coat sleeve like a moth's wing. A faint floral scent drifts behind her, sharp and sweet. She doesn't look at you, her chin lifted just enough that your existence stays. Somewhere below her line of sight, back down the stairs you go, the echo of your own boots, reminding you where your place begins and ends. No grand promenades for you. No brass railings gleaming in the sun. Just this corridor, dim lamps swaying with the ship's slow roll. You turn the corner and nearly collide with a boy, no older than 12, a cabin boy by his brass-buttoned jacket. He mumbles an apology, head lowered, eyes flicking to your hands to see if you'll cuff him for clumsiness. You don't. You offer him a small nod instead. His shoulders ease. He scurries off, balancing a tray of teacups meant for someone far more important than either of you. At the far end of the passage, you hear voices. Knot of passengers stand in a loose circle. Half whispers and soft laughter, gossip, the one pastime that needs no ticket, no invitation. You drift closer, hands in your pockets, one shoulder pressed to the wall. They speak of a couple thrown out of the saloon last night. Too much ale, too loud a song. Laughter that didn't fit the hush the stewards prefer. Man with a red nose and a wife in a shawl too thin for the wind. They were made to sleep in the corridor for an hour, heads down, eyes closed, a reminder to mind your manners. Even at C. Someone catches your eye, an older woman, her cheeks soft and kind. She leans in, her whisper shaped for you alone. They watch everything. They see who bows, who forgets to say, sir. It's a ship, but it's still a village, aye? You nod. It feels true. More true than the fancy posters that promised open air and bright lights. Here, in these narrow halls, there are invisible lines. Where to stand, when to speak. When to lower your eyes. A door opens just down the corridor. The hush swells into sudden sound. Silver laughter, the pop of a cork, the low murmur of a violin echoing from a private cabin. A steward slips through, a tray balanced on. 1 palm glass bottles, silver spoons clinking. He catches you staring, gives you a glance that says don't linger. You step back, your shoulder pressed against the cold metal wall. You move on, your boots thumping softly over the runners, your head full of half-heard words. You pass a young woman pinning up laundry in the shared washroom. She pauses, pen between her lips, eyes flicking to you. You nod a quiet hello. She doesn't answer, but her eyes soften. You see the bruise on her wrist, faint purple, where someone grabbed too hard. You wonder if she'll speak of it, but she drops her eyes, returns to the sheets. The rules are clear. Some stories stay tucked under blankets, never aired where the wrong ears might listen. Near the stairwell again, you find a small knot of men playing cards. They perch on crates, a kerosene lamp flickering on the floor between them. One man looks up. He has a missing tooth, a grin that doesn't quite reach his eyes. He gestures for you to sit, if you've got coin to lose. You join them, if only to warm your hands near the lamp. They talk in low voices, gossip and half-truth stitched together, like cheap cloth. One brags about seeing a rich man slip away to the lower deck to visit a girl. He wasn't supposed to know. Another tells you that the crew knows every secret corner, every stairwell where hands might touch that shouldn't, every locked door where laughter shouldn't echo. You lay down your last copper. Your hand loses. No. Surprised. You stand. Offer a nod. They don't stop you. Your coin becomes theirs. Payment for the warmth of an hour's company. Back to your berth you drift, shoulders brushing rough walls, head ducked each time a steward passes. You pass a girl sweeping the floor, her broom catching in the floorboards. She works in silence, hair pulled tight against her skull, eyes never rising above the hem of her apron. You think how strange. It is this floating city where hundreds eat, sleep, pray for good weather, and yet each stays so tightly stitched to their place. The man in the fine hat never sees you. The steward never calls you by name. The girl with the broom never lifts her eyes. And you bow your head, keep your voice soft, and hope the ocean stays calm. Tomorrow, maybe, you'll dare the upper deck again, catch a glimpse of the music rooms, the glass windows that glow like lanterns in the dark. But tonight you bow where you must, nod when you're told, and drift through this maze of rules that wraps around you tighter than any lifeboat ever could. You stand by the narrow corridor window, watching your own breath cloud the glass dot. It's strange. You thought a ship so grand would feel warm in every corner, but here, in the mid-morning hush, you sense every draft that slides under doors and through thin walls. You roll your shoulders, trying to loosen the knot that's grown near your spine. Your hands sting from earlier chores. Rope burns across your palm where the crate slipped, splinters still lodged deep enough to remind you. With every squeeze, your boots scuff the worn runner on the floor. You can almost hear the heartbeat of the ship, a faint, constant hum that never quiets. A steward passes by, eyes flicking to your idle hands. He doesn't speak, but you know what that look means. You push away from the window. Your breath leaves a ghost of you behind, and you walk back toward the service pantry, looking for something useful to do. They hand you a rag, a battered tin of polished brass railings near the stairwell need shining. You kneel, cloth in hand, the cold metal pressing against your knee as you rub small circles. The brass glows beneath. You touch tiny patches of gold emerging from a film of grime. It feels good. In a way, mindless, rhythmic. But each stroke makes your shoulder burn a little deeper. Above you, heavy footsteps echo on the upper deck. First-class passengers taking their morning stroll, bundled in furs and hats that catch the breeze like sails. You catch a glimpse through a side door. A woman in a wide hat, her gloved hand resting on a gentleman's arm. Their laughter floats down the stairwell, like warm air you can't quite touch. You pause to rest your arm just for a moment. Your back curls forward, forehead brushing the cold brass dot. You wonder what the dining saloon looks like up there. All bright lights, hot tea poured into porcelain, the clink of spoons on fine-boned china. Down here, the best you can hope for is a cup of lukewarm tea. If a friendly steward spares it, you move on to the next rail. The cloth slides over dents, smudges, fingerprints from hands that don't belong to you. Someone brushes past, a young boy carrying folded linens, his boots too big, his eyes wary of your elbows. You nod, a silent greeting. But he's already gone, lost down the maze of corridors. Time moves strangely here. You'd swear hours pass. But when you check the wall clock, the hands have barely crawled. Your stomach rumbles. Not quite hunger, more a dull emptiness that gnaws when you breathe too deep. You wipe sweat from your brow. The corridor air is cold, but the work keeps. You warm enough to shiver when you stop. A soft clang echoes through the hallway. metal tools clinking somewhere. Down by the engine rooms. You think of the coal trimmers. Black dust covering their arms like ink, sweat soaking their undershirts until they stick to their skin. You imagine the air down there, thick and hot, smelling of oil and soot. Your own chores feel lighter by comparison, but the ache in your knees reminds you that every place on this ship takes its toll. You stand, rolling your shoulders again, cloth tucked into your pocket for later. At the next corridor, you see a young girl crouched beside a wash bucket, her sleeves rolled to the elbows, hands raw from scrubbing the scuffed floorboards. She hums to herself, voice soft and breathy, a lullaby. Maybe. You catch her eye. A shy half-smile flickers before she looks away. You want to say something, a word of comfort, perhaps, but what is there to say? You keep moving, footsteps soft, so you don't break her small song. A bell rings in the distance, the faint, rhythmic toll that marks the hours for the crew. A steward snaps his fingers, gesturing for you to help shift a trunk that's blocking the corridor. You bend. Grip the metal handle. It bites into your palm, presses the splinter deeper. You clench your teeth, breathe through your nose. Together, you slide the trunk aside, metal scraping the floor with a low groan. When it's done, you straighten up too fast. A wave of dizziness ripples through you, the corridor light swimming before your eyes. You lean your shoulder to the wall, palms braced, letting the hum of the ship steady you. Your vision clears, but the ache lingers deep in your legs, your back, the tips of your fingers. Down the passage, you hear the faint sound of a violin, not the grand orchestra in first class, but a single player practicing near the crew quarters. A mournful tune, drifting through the walls like a dream half remembered. You let it wash over you, eyes closed for just a heartbeat. One soft note after another, carrying you far from the cold steel under your boots. You open your eyes. A steward barks your name or what passes for it. You're wanted at the supply closet. More linens to carry to the washroom. You nod, push yourself upright. The small comfort of the violin fading behind you. Your boots thud on the floor. Each step a small act of will. You reach the supply closet. The smell of soap and damp fabric hits you first. Inside, stacks of sheets, pillowcases, thin towels folded in weary piles. You gather an armful, the cloth rough against your cheek, the weight pressing on your forearms. You pass the girl still scrubbing the floor. She glances up, eyes shining with dampness. Neither of you speak. Your boots track tiny flecks of dirt across her freshly scrubbed boards. You want to say sorry, but your mouth stays closed. You drop the linens off at the washroom. Steam billows through the open door, damp air curling around your wrists. Inside, two women bend over wash basins, sleeves rolled, faces flushed. They nod when you enter. You nod back, and you're gone again, the door creaking shut behind you. Back in the corridor, you lean against the wall, eyes closed for just a breath. The hum of the ship wrapping around you like a tired blanket. You think of the ocean, the cold black water pressing against the hull. You wonder if it would feel softer than the ache that sits in your bones now. But your eyes open, your feet keep moving. There is always another bell, another trunk, another splinter that says you still have more to give. You hear the bell, soft, distant, echoing through the maze of metal and wood. Midday. Your body knows before your mind does. Your stomach tightens with the hope of warmth, of bread, of something to fill that hollow gnaw at your ribs. You wipe. Your palms on your trousers, the Polish cloth tucked away now. Your shoulders still sore from the brass railings. You fall in step with the others, men, women, boys, all drifting down the narrow corridor like driftwood pulled by a tide. The third-class dining saloon is no grand affair, no polished silver. No white linen cloths, just long wooden tables, benches bolted to the floor so they don't slide. When the ship pitches, the air is thick with boiled vegetables, stale beer, the sourness of damp wool drying on tired backs. You claim a spot near the end of a table. Your neighbor is an old man with a cough that rattles like a loose bolt. He nods at you, a wordless greeting, his eyes sunk deep behind crinkled lids. A faint wheeze between each breath. A steward lumbers down the aisle, ladles clatter. Tin bowls scrape against rough wood. Your turn comes, a ladle of thin broth, a hunk of bread that's already going hard at the crust. No, butter today. Not for your fare. You cradle the bowl in your hands, the warmth a blessing, even if the taste is little more than salted water with a whisper of turnip. You dip the bread. Let it soften. Chew slowly. Each bite stretches time. You don't want to finish too soon. Voices bubble around you, Irish, English, Italian, a swirl of tongues that blur into the drone of a restless hive. You catch bits, talk of the weather, of letters to family back home, of where they'll settle when the ship reaches New York. Hope sits thick in these walls, heavier than the steam that fogs the small porthole windows. The old man beside you coughs again, a thin thread of spit at the corner of his mouth. He wipes it with the back of his hand, dips his bread into the broth without meeting your eyes. You wonder how much he paid for his ticket, how many coins scraped together for this small chance at something better. When the broth is gone, you rub the last crumb between your thumb and forefinger. No second servings. Not here. Not for you. You drift from the table, bowl clutched in your hand, until a steward gestures for it. You place it gently on the stack, careful not to clatter. The steward's eyes flick over you, the faintest nod that you did it right. Past the dining saloon, the corridor widens. Just enough for a makeshift market. Not an official one. No stall banners. No bright calls of hawkers. Just small knots of people with things to trade. A pocket knife for a wool cap. A scrap of bacon for a battered comb. A single cigarette for a story from home. You lean against a bulkhead, watching a young woman with her apron pockets turned out. She's got a spool of thread to trade. A boy offers her a half loaf, stale but still edible. They haggle in low voices. The clink of a single penny seals the deal. Both drift away, eyes down, the bargain already forgotten by the next breath. You check your own pockets, a few loose buttons, a length of twine, not much worth offering. Still, you drift closer to the edges, listening to the small drama that unfolds like a puppet show. Two men argue over a pair of gloves. One swears they're lambskin. The other calls him a liar. Voices rise. Eyes flick around to see if the stewards will intervene. But the stewards stay back. As long as it stays quiet, they let the scraps change hands. The market smells of wool, cheap tobacco, the faint tang of onions that someone smuggled down from the galley. You catch a whiff of something sweet, an apple. Your eyes find it, bruised, small, clutched in a child's hand as she hides behind her mother's skirt. You'd forgotten how sharp a fresh apple smells, how the sweetness can slice through stale bread and salt broth. You turn away, shoulders pressing to the cool steel. Wall dot, no sense, wanting what you can't have. Better to keep your eyes on your boots, your fingers tucked in your pockets. Behind you, a man mutters a joke, something about the food in first class. He says the rich folk sit under chandeliers, eat roast duck, drink French wine. Another laughs, says he heard they serve oysters on silver plates. Someone else scoffs, says it's all lies. The same salt pork as the rest of us, just cooked with fancy words. You let their chatter wash over you, a distant echo that means little when your belly's still half hollow. Past the market, you find a small corner to rest. A crate flipped sideways makes a seat, your back pressed, to a stack of trunks tied tight with fraying rope. You close your eyes, the hum of the ship beneath you, like a heartbeat. Steady but distant. Somewhere, a man with an accordion plays a tune that drifts like smoke through the narrow hall. A woman hums along, her voice cracked but soft, the words lost in the shuffle of boots. You open your eyes when you feel a tap. On your shoulder, a boy with a grin missing 2 teeth offers you a scrap of biscuit. You take it, nod your thanks. The biscuit crumbles like chalk on your tongue, dry, but it tastes of kindness. Someone calls out, a steward's bark, a reminder that loitering means trouble. You stand, roll your shoulders, glance one last time at the knot of barterers behind you. Small trades, small hopes. Better than nothing. You tuck your hands in your pockets, turn back toward the corridor. Another bell rings somewhere far off, a hollow clang that says the day moves on, whether you're ready or not. You step back into the corridor, the stale smell of the midday market still clinging to your sleeves. Your boots tap a steady rhythm down the metal floor, your eyes fixed on the faint line of daylight that slips beneath the heavy door leading to the outer deck. You shouldn't linger out there, too cold. Too easy to be spotted dawdling, but you can't help it. You need air that doesn't taste of sweat and soup. You push the door open. A soft groan of hinges, a whisper of salt wind on your face. The Atlantic stretches forever, gray, churning. Impossible. Clouds hang low, their bellies swollen with the threat of a drizzle that never quite comes. You stand in the lee of the deck wall, feeling the sting on your cheeks. Your knuckles ache, the splinter from this morning still buried beneath the skin. You run your thumb over it, wishing you had a pen to dig it out. You turn back to work when a steward's shout cuts through the winged supplies need shifting. Crates and barrels, cargo lashed tight with rough rope. You fall in line with 2 other labs, all of you bent double to ease the weight across your shoulders. The crate digs into your spine. Every step bounces a jolt through your boots, up your shins, into the tender spot behind your eyes. You lower the crate at the hatch. Your breath wheezes out in clouds. A young man beside you curses in a low Irish brogue. Says he twisted his wrist last time the ship lurched. He flexes his fingers, purple and swollen like plums. You nod, offer no words. What could you say that wouldn't sound like pity? You wipe your brow on your sleeve. The sweat chills too fast in the breeze. Somewhere far above, laughter echoes from the promenade deck. First-class passengers wrapped in thick wool coats, hands gloved, cheeks pink from the bracing air. Watch the sea like it's a painting hung just for them. Never mind the crates and the cold dot. Another crate waits, smaller this time, but slick with condensation. Dot, your grip slips once. A corner scrapes your forearm raw. Dot, tiny beads of blood bloom like berries against your skin. You suck in a hiss of breath. Press your sleeve to the cut. Nothing deep, just another ache to carry through the day. When the last barrel is stowed, you stand by the hatch, rubbing the grit from your eyes. A petty officer strolls past. He pauses, eyes on your split sleeve, the red stain beneath. He doesn't ask if you're well. He just nods toward the next task. A broom, a mop bucket. Patch of deck slick with salt spray that needs scouring before it freezes over. You dip the broom into the bucket. Bristles splay. Water runs cold over your knuckles. You scrub in slow, aching circles. The wind catches the spray. Flex your face. Your shirt soaks the thin cloth until it clings to your back. Down the rail, you see another lad lean over, retching into the waves. Dot, his face pale as paper. Seasick, maybe, or hungover from cheap beer traded down in steerage. You keep your eyes low. Your stomach isn't strong enough to watch for too long. The work keeps your muscles warm, but your fingers grow stiff as the sun slides behind a patch of thicker clouds. You flex your hands open, close, until the sting becomes dull enough to ignore. Nearby, a woman fusses with a small boy's scarf. She ties and reties the knot, her fingers red with cold. The boy's nose drips, but he doesn't complain. He just watches the horizon, like he knows what waits in the dark water. Dot, you rinse the mop head in the bucket, watch the dirty water swirl down the drained. A day sailor passes, boots scuffing the deck. He whistles under his breath, a tune you half recognize but can't place. A few steps later, he pauses, lifts his chin toward the upper deck. A trio of men in dark coats stand there, heads bent in quiet talk. You catch a word, iceberg, but it drifts away on the wind before you can hear more. You look up, just sky, bruised gray and heavy. Dot, no ice in sight. You dip the broom again, scrub a fresh patch of salt crust. Your shoulders twinge with every push, tiny splinters of pain that slide along your collarbones. Settle in your neck. A rough cough builds in your chest. You swallow it down, but it lingers like a thorn. When the deck is clean enough, you stack the mop and bucket near the hatch. Dot, your feet ache. Blisters raw along the heel where the boot seams rub you raw. You loosen the laces for relief. It helps, but not much. Dot, below decks, you slip into the washroom to splash cold water on your cut forearm. The wound weeps a thin trickle of red. You wrap it in a rag, tie it tight. No doctor for a scratch like this. Not for the likes of you. On your way out, you pass a man hunched near the bunk rooms. He scratches at a rash on his arm, skin flaking like dry bark. He smiles at you, teeth like chipped chalk. Says something about the bunk being full of lice. You nod, step around him, keep your eyes on the floor. Dot, your boots thud down the metal stairs. The hum of the engines grows louder the deeper you go. Dot, air turns warmer, thicker, but the heat does nothing for the smell. Oil, sweat, stale clothes that never quite dry. Dot, you press your hand to the corridor wall. Feel the vibration, still alive with motion, churning west through black water that never sleeps. Somewhere in the dark, the ship's pulse pushes forward. Blind to the bruises it leaves on your skin, you rub your shoulder, a small circle to ease the knot that won't come loose. Your stomach growls. You think of the stale bread you tucked in your coat pocket. Maybe you'll find a quiet corner to chew it before the next bell calls you back above. A steward shouts for you, a crate shifted loose in the storage hold. One more task, one more reason. To keep moving, you step back into the corridor, the chill in your boots and the ache in your bones reminding you out here. Even the grandest ship at sea can feel like a prison made of brass and salt. Your boots echo down the corridor, a hollow, steady sound that makes your pulse quicken for no reason you can name. You've just finished hauling the last crate back into place. The ropes knotted tight now, the hold silent again, except for the low groan of the ship's bones shifting as she plows through dark water. You'd hoped for a moment to sit, maybe chew the last corner of bread in your pocket, but the buzz among the men is impossible to ignore, a ripple of hushed voices that cling to the metal walls like frost. A boy, Thomas, they call him no more than 16, hair like straw, and hands that never stop twitching, grabs your sleeve as you pass. Did you hear? He whispers, eyes darting to the shadows behind you. Hear what? You glance around, the corridor is empty, but the hum of whispers feels thick enough to breathe. They say the lookout saw ice. His words slip out in a rush, like they're too heavy to keep. Big ones. A whole field drifting south. They're towing the bridge, but he stops, mouth snapping shut as a steward rounds the corner. You nod at Thomas, a small gesture that says you heard, but you'll pretend you didn't. The steward's eyes pass over you. He barks for you both to clear the passage, gestures toward a broom leaning by the wall. Always something to clean. You push the broom along the corridor, bristles dragging through grit and coal dust. You can feel Thomas watching you, wide dash-eyed dot. You wonder if he's heard too many tailies stories that blow small bits of ice into looming monsters. Yet the ship does feel different tonight. A tremor you can't name, like the hum in the floorboards is tighter. Wind like a string pulled too taut. You push through the door to the lower bunk area. A half-dozen men lounge on their bunks, boots kicked off, pipe, smoke curling toward the low ceiling. They talk in low voices. One flicks his chin at you. Is it true? He asks. You shrug, settle on a trunk near the door. About the ice? Maybe. Sea's cold enough for it. He laughs, a hollow sound. That dies fast. Ain't no ice gonna sink this one, mate. Double hull, watertight doors. She's the safest thing afloat. The others nod, but you can feel the unease that lives behind their forced grins. Someone pulls a bottle from beneath a blanket, cheap whiskey, sharp enough to burn the nose before it touches your lips. You pass on the swig, your stomach twists too much already. The talk drifts, a rumor about a stoker who slipped and broke his leg, about a steward caught pocketing silver from the second-class dining room. But the word ice keeps circling back, like a gull that won't leave thee. Grail. You stand, roll your shoulders. The room feels too close. The walls too tight. You step back out into the passageway, letting the ship's steady hum press against your ears. Up the stairwell, you catch a sliver of open door. A warm glow spills from the wireless room. You pause at the bottom step, listening. 2 operators inside, Their voices sharp, urgent, dots and dashes tap out in staccato beats, an invisible thread binding this drifting city to the rest of the world. One man laughs. You'd think they'd stop partying up there long enough to listen. Warnings all day, more to come. You press back into the shadows as the door clicks shut. Warnings all day. More to come. A sudden shiver sneaks beneath your collar. Not the cold this time. Something deeper, something you don't want to name. Down the passage you see a cluster near the engine room door. A petty officer stands with a clipboard, eyes darting from face to face. You drift closer, pretending to scrub a railing as you listen. Keep the speed steady, the officer mutters, voice low. Orders from the bridge. No slowing tonight. A man with soot on his cheek spits on the deck. Full steam through ice? Madness. The officer shoots him a glare sharp enough to slice through the boiler room heat. Bridge knows best. Keep your tongue behind your teeth, or you'll be warming the coal yourself. They scatter when they see you watching. A hush descends like a blanket. You push your rag back in your pocket, hands trembling just a little. Back on the open deck, the cold feels sharper now. The wind whips your hair, cuts across your ears. You look up, the sky clear, black as tar, stars cold and countless. You wonder where the ice is, if it waits like a ghost, silent and white, ready to slip beneath the keel and do what the sea always does to the proud. You lean against the rail, the steel cold through your shirt sleeve. Somewhere below in first class, the band still plays. You can almost hear it, a faint waltz drifting through the floorboards, like a memory of warmth you'll never touch. A steward finds you there. He taps you on the shoulder, points back toward the corridor. Too cold to linger, lad. Off you go. You nod, push yourself upright, your hands raw against the rail as you release your grip. You step back into the ship's belly, the hum of the engines, the creak of the hull, the whispers behind every door. You wish you could believe they'd talk, watertight doors, double hulls, but deep down, you know it doesn't take much for water to find its way in, and when it does, all the fancy walls and warm beds in the world won't keep it out. Another steward calls, more crates to check, ropes to tighten, tasks to keep your hands busy while your mind spins. You nod, wipe your nose on your sleeve, tuck your chin, too, your chest. You can almost feel the ice now, out there in the dark, drifting closer, patient, as the ocean always is. Your boots feel heavier with every step. You swear you can hear your heartbeat in your toes, pulsing in the blisters you've tried so hard not to notice. You lean a hand against the bulkhead as you pass through the lower corridor, fingers brushing rivets cool as river stones. You smell oil, coal dust, the lingering tang of cheap stew that clings to every scrap of cloth down here. The warm air of the boiler deck does little to ease the chill that lives under your skin. It's the kind of tired that sleep can't quite mend. The kind that settles in your ribs, under your eyes, behind your knees. A soft clang rings out ahead. Two stokers shuffle past, shirts dark with sweat, eyes rimmed red like lantern glass. They nod but say nothing, their exhaustion a wordless language. You both understand. You pause at a corner where a pipe hisses steam. You rest your back against the wall for a moment, letting the hum of the engines carry your thoughts somewhere far beyond this steel coffin. You think of home, Whatever home means now that you're here. Maybe a stone cottage near Belfast, rain drumming the slate roof like a lullaby, maybe. A mother's voice calling you in for supper. Maybe nothing but the memory of warmth. A memory dulled by the long nights at sea. You rub your eyes with the back of your hand. Feel the grit caught in the creases of your skin. Adieu. Door creaks nearby. Thomas, the straw-haired boy from earlier, slips out of the bunkroom, eyes half shut, a small cloth bundle clutched in his hand. Bread crusts, maybe, or a scrap of cheese he's bartered from the galley. He catches your gaze and lifts his shoulders in a helpless shrug. Just in case, he whispers, voice hoarse. You don't ask, you just nod. Food's too precious to question. A distant groan ripples through the hull. The ship shifts beneath your boots. A reminder that this palace is never still. You wonder how thick the metal really is. How many inches of steel and rivets stand between you and the frozen black that waits outside. You drift to the stairwell, fingers sliding along the railing. Every joint in your hand feels like rusted hinges above. You can just hear the faint echoes of the band, a violin's waltz that sounds too soft to touch you here. Buried in the ship's belly, you pause. On the stair landing, peering through a porthole streaked with condensation. Outside, the Atlantic rolls and rolls. A heaving blanket of ink that could swallow a man without a sound. You think of the word. They've all been passing around like a secret iceberg, a ghost floating out there, waiting for a kiss too cold to survive. A petty officer brushes past you, knocking your shoulder. Off your feet, he grunts. Plenty yet to do. You mumble an apology, though you aren't sure what you're sorry for. Your bones, your weariness, the ocean that doesn't care for either. Back in the corridor, you slip into a quiet niche near the storeroom. You slide down the wall until you're crouched, knees pulled to your chest. You tug at your bootlaces, loosening them to give your swollen feet room to breathe. Your mind drifts. As you rest your forehead on your arms, you think of how tomorrow might look. Sunrise over the bow, a shimmer of frost on the railings. Another barrel to lift, another rope to haul. Always the same rhythm. A heartbeat that belongs to the ship. Not to you. Your shoulders ache. A knot between your shoulder blades pulses every time you draw breath. You roll it against the steel wall. A poor man's massage until it loosens enough to dull the sting. Somewhere nearby, you hear a low chuckle, a story told in half whispers. Two men swap tailies of stowaways found hiding in coal bins. You listen, eyes closed. A scrap of gossip to tether you to the world for a minute longer. You catch yourself drifting, not asleep yet, but hovering near the edge where thoughts blur into the hush of dreams. In this quiet, you remember the talk of lifeboats. You've counted them. Everyone has. Not enough. They say not nearly enough for the passengers and the crew. A fact so sharp, it's better tucked away like a splinter you refuse to pick. You lift your head, catch your reflection in a dented metal panel. Your face looks older than you. Remember lines that didn't exist when you boarded. Eyes that flinch when you imagine the cold black waiting below. You rub your palms together, chasing warmth that never stays. You wish for thicker gloves, for dry socks, for a pillow that doesn't smell of mildew. Little luxuries, small wishes that keep the fear at bay. You push up to your feet, knees creaking like old hinges. Your bunk calls, but so does the last round of duties. You promise yourself a few more minutes to lean against the wall, to let the rumble of the engines lull your thoughts into something softer. Somewhere behind the walls, steam hisses, metal plates flex and sigh. Titanic pushes forward through black water, big as a city, but helpless as a child. When the sea decides to show its teeth, you run your tongue along your teeth, the taste of salt and steel thick on your tongue. You breathe slow, in, out, the weight pressing your eyelids half shut. Tomorrow you'll wake. You'll haul crates, scrub decks, listen for whispers you're not meant to hear. But tonight, you rest your spine against the heartbeat of this iron beast, your thoughts drifting through rivets and steam, wondering what waits in the dark, and whether this floating dream will hold through the night. Your boots feel heavier with every step. You swear you can hear your heartbeat in your toes, pulsing in the blisters you've tried so hard not to notice. You lean a hand against a bulkhead as you pass through the lower corridor, fingers brushing rivets cool as river stones. You smell oil, coal dust, the lingering tang of cheap stew that clings to every scrap of cloth down here. The warm air of the boiler deck does little to ease the chill that lives under your skin. It's the kind of tired that sleep can't quite mend. The kind that settles in your ribs, under your eyes, behind your knees. A soft clang rings out ahead. Two stokers shuffle past, shirts dark with sweat, eyes rimmed red like lantern glass. They nod but say nothing, their exhaustion a wordless language. You both understand. You pause at a corner where a pipe hisses steam. You rest your back against the wall for a moment, letting the hum of the engines carry your thoughts somewhere far beyond this steel coffin. You think of home, whatever home means now that you're here. Maybe a stone cottage near Belfast, rain drumming the slate roof like a lullaby, maybe. A mother's voice calling you in for supper. Maybe nothing but the memory of warmth. A memory dulled by the long nights at sea. You rub your eyes with the back of your hand. Feel the grit caught in the creases of your skin. Adieu. Door creaks nearby. Thomas, the straw-haired boy from earlier, slips out of the bunkroom. Eyes half shut, a small cloth bundle clutched in his hand. Bread crusts, maybe, or a scrap of cheese he's bartered from the galley. He catches your gaze and lifts his shoulders in a helpless shrug. Just in case, he whispers, voice hoarse. You don't ask, you just nod. Food's too precious to question. A distant groan ripples through the hull. The ship shifts beneath your boots, a reminder that this palace is never still. You wonder how thick the metal really is, how many inches of steel and rivets stand between you and the frozen black that waits outside. You drift to the stairwell, fingers sliding along the railing. Every joint in your hand feels like rusted hinges above. You can just hear the faint echoes of the band, a violin's waltz that sounds too soft to touch you here. Buried in the ship's belly, you pause. On the stair landing, peering through a porthole streaked with condensation. Outside, the Atlantic rolls and rolls, a heaving blanket of ink that could swallow a man without a sound. You think of the word. They've all been passing around like a secret iceberg, a ghost floating out there, waiting for a kiss too cold to survive. A petty officer brushes past you, knocking your shoulder. Off your feet, he grunts. Plenty yet to do. You mumble an apology, though you aren't sure what you're sorry for. Your bones, your weariness, the ocean that doesn't care for either. Back in the corridor, you slip into a quiet niche near the storeroom. You slide down the wall until you're crouched, knees pulled to your chest. You tug at your bootlaces, loosening them to give your swollen feet room to breathe. Your mind drifts. As you rest your forehead on your arms, you think of how tomorrow might look. Sunrise over the bow, a shimmer of frost on the railings, another barrel to lift, another rope to haul. Dot, always the same rhythm, a heartbeat that belongs to the ship, not to you. Dot, your shoulders ache. A knot between your shoulder blades pulses every time you draw breath. You roll it against the steel wall, a poor man's massage, until it loosens enough to dull the sting. Somewhere nearby, you hear a low chuckle, a story told in half whispers. Two men swap tales of stowaways found hiding in coal bins. You listen, eyes closed. A scrap of gossip to tether you to the world for a minute longer. You catch yourself drifting, not asleep yet, but hovering near the edge where thoughts blur into the hush of dreams. Dot, in this quiet, you remember the talk of lifeboats. You've counted them. Everyone has. Not enough. They say not nearly enough for the passengers and the crew. A fact so sharp, it's better tucked away like a splinter you refuse to pick. You lift your head, catch your reflection in a dented metal panel. Your face looks older than you. Remember. Dot, lines that didn't exist when you boarded. Dot, eyes that flinch when you imagine the cold black waiting below. You rub your palms together, chasing warmth that never stays. You wish for thicker gloves, for dry socks, for a pillow that doesn't smell of mildew. Little luxuries, small wishes that keep the fear at bay. You push up to your feet, knees creaking like old hinges. Your bunk calls, but so does the last round of duties. You promise yourself a few more minutes to lean against the wall, to let the rumble of the engines lull your thoughts into something softer. Somewhere behind the walls, steam hisses, metal plates flex and sigh. Titanic pushes forward through black water, big as a city, but helpless as a child. When the sea decides to show its teeth, you run your tongue along your teeth, the taste of salt and steel thick on your tongue. You breathe slow, in, out, the weight pressing your eyelids half shut. Tomorrow you'll wake. You'll haul crates, scrub decks, listen for whispers you're not meant to hear. But tonight, you rest your spine against the heartbeat of this iron beast, your thoughts drifting through rivets and steam, wondering what waits in the dark, and whether this floating dream will hold through the night. Your boots are off. Finally. Dot, they sit by the bunk's edge, scuffed leather curled at the toes. Dot, your socks are thin as moth wings. You rub your feet, massaging the cold from your arches, but the chill lingers, a stubborn reminder that the Atlantic always finds a way in. Around you, the bunk room is a chorus of breath and murmurs. One man mumbles a prayer, another clears his throat, the wet rattle echoing off steel walls. Straw pokes through the ticking mattress like tiny needles. You shift, trying to find a patch that won't bite your back raw. You pull the blanket over your shoulders, scratchy wool that smells of salt and mildew. Someone snores nearby, deep and steady. The rhythm almost soothes you. Almost. But each time the ship's hull groans, your eyes flick open, searching for cracks in the seams, searching for the first drip of that frozen ocean outside. You close your eyes, Try to sink into the straw, to let the weariness drag you under. But the room is alive, rustles of fabric, a cough, the tap-tap of a rat's claws along the wooden beams above. No one bothers to chase it tonight. Too tired. Too cold. You shift again, pulling the blanket up to your chin. It does little to trap the heat. The steel wall at your back leaches warmth. Like an endless winter. Your breath puffs in small clouds. You press your toes together, willing circulation back into them. Soft voices drift from the far bunks. A story traded in hushed tones. A tale of a stoker who once tried to stow away in first class, woke up with a boot to the ribs and a ticket back to the boiler deck. They laugh, but the sound is brittle. No one believes in escape. Not really. Your eyes drift to the ceiling. The low pipes shudder with steam. Somewhere beyond, the engine's pulse, a lullaby of iron and coal and human sweat. Your mind drifts with it, past the rivets, past the creaks in the hull to the cold black that lies in wait, deeper than sleep. You shift your legs, curl onto your side. The straw pokes your hip. You scratch an itch, pull the blanket tighter. You wish for another layer, a thicker quilt, a mother's warm hand smoothing your hair. But this is all you have, a wheel scrap and your own breath to keep the frost from your bones. You hear someone whisper a prayer, something about safe passage. Calm seas, warm beds waiting on dry land. You don't join in, but you let the words drift through you, a borrowed hope. You press your hand to the wall, feel the faint vibration of the sea pressing back, steel on water, bones on steel. You, a single heartbeat among hundreds, all dreaming different dreams, all listening for the same cracks that must never come. You close your eyes again. The darkness behind your lids flickers with drifting shapes, faces you knew back home. The curve of a green hill, a smoke plume rising from a chimney. You cling to the softness of that memory. Let it anchor you against the cold bite of the North Atlantic. Someone rolls over, the bunk frame groans. Cough stabs through the hushed. You tug the blanket over your head, but the cold creeps in any way. It snakes under the thin fabric, finds your ribs, your spine. You breathe slow. Count each inhale, each exhale. It's an old trick, one your father taught you when the storms rattled the roof. Count until the wind forgets your name. You wonder, briefly, how deep the sea is tonight. How far you'd sink before the dark claims you. You shake the thought off focus instead on the rattle of a man's snores, the shuffle of a rat in the corner, the ship's endless sigh. In this metal cradle. Sleep comes in fragments. You drift, then startle awake when the hull groans. You slip under again, then wake when someone shifts, mutters, dreams too loudly. A lamp flickers somewhere beyond the bunks. A lone flame fighting the dark. Its glow touches your bunk's edge. Warm as a ghost's hand, you watch the shadows dance on the ceiling, flat shapes that stretch and shrink with each roll of the ship. You swallow dry. Your tongue taste of salt and stale bread. Your belly hums with a hunger that sleep can't. Quiet, but you close your eyes again, count another breath. Another. Maybe. You think the ice will keep its distance tonight. Maybe you'll wake to the same cold hum. No alarms. No rush for lifeboats. No boots slipping on frost. Just another dawn. Another stale meal. Another haul of crates. Another quiet prayer at dusk. Your shoulders sink. Deeper into the straw, the blanket scratches your cheek. Your heartbeat slows. You listen to the water pressing the hull, to the men dreaming beside you, to the ship's soft iron lullaby dot in the dark. You promise yourself you'll wake strong, you'll work hard, you'll last, if only for one more day. You lie still now, your bones pressed deep into the straw, a bed made of scratchy threads and leftover warmth from the day's last breath. Outside these thin steel walls, the sea hums its ancient tune, a low, endless murmur that seeps through. Bolts and rivets finding your ear like a lullaby sung by something older than any ship. Your breath is shallow, each inhale a drift of cold air, each exhale a ghost that floats up, spiraling into shadows above your bunk. You listen to the man 3 bunks down, snoring in a broken rhythm dot to a faint squeak of a rat slipping through a crack near the floorboards dot to your own pulse echoing in your skull, a soft drum that matches the Titanic's heartbeat. You pull the blanket tighter. Thin wool scrapes your cheek, smelling of salt and damp straw, itchy in places, softer where the threads have worn away. Your feet pressed together for warmth, toes numb but familiar. They're yours. Still above the WATERLINE dot, somewhere overhead, in a world that feels like a dream. The party stirs, strings and laughter, shoes tapping on polished floors. The music a muffled ghost through layers of iron and wood. You picture them, they, ladies in silk and lace, the men in stiff collars. Their shadows whirl in candlelight. Blind to the black sea they glide above. You drift, half in their ballroom, half in this bunk. Your body cold, your mind warm with the imagined hum of violins. Shudder in the hull brings you back. A creak so deep you feel it in your teeth. You open your eyes. See nothing but the low curve of the bunk above dot another breath. Another slip towards sleep. You shift. The straw crunches under your hip. A draft tickles the back of your neck. You tuck your chin down, nose to your chest. Small animal seeking a burrow against the steel night. A drip somewhere in the pipes. A murmur in your bones. Maybe tomorrow will be warmer. Maybe the sun will touch your face on the deck. Even for a moment, a patch of warmth. Before you dive back into the ship's belly, your fingers curl into the blanket's edge, nails bitten short, dirt under them. Proof you worked today, carried your share, kept your place among the shadows, who keep the lights bright for the dancing ghosts above. Your eyelids flutter. Behind them, a flicker of green hills, fields from a life you left behind. A soft drizzle on a crooked roof, your mother's voice humming you to sleep. You count your heart beats again, old habit. 1, 2, 3. The engines match you, churning coal into motion, motion into distance. But under it all, you hear the hush of the sea, a gentle promise that all steel drifts back to salt in the end. Your breath deepens. The snoring man turns, coughs once, goes quiet again. You feel his warmth in the air, proof you're not alone. You're never alone here. Steel walls, bunk beds, flickering oil lamps, damp boots lined up in a row, each man with a name, a pocket of memories all pressed together in the ship's beating heart. You shift, turn onto your other side. The blanket falls over your ear, muffling the world. The faint vibration of the engines is a cradle. The Atlantic hum is a soft hymn. You imagine the cold above deck, The hiss of ice against the hull, the way frost clings to railings. But here, in this cradle of straw and rags, you are almost warm, almost safe. Almost. You think you'll wake before dawn. You always do. A shiver in the floor will stir you. Another shift in the ship's great bones. You'll swing your feet down, boots cold as the grave, stand and stretch the sleep from your joints. But for now, you drift, eyes closed, lips parted. No need for words anymore. The shadows settle on your chest like a soft quilt. The hush folds in around you. Each creak of the hull, each sigh from the sea, another lullaby note, plucked by the iceberg that waits in the dark. But you do not know this yet. Not tonight. Tonight. You count heartbeats. You dream of dry land. You sink past the steel walls into sleep. Deeper than coal, softer than straw. You breathe out a final mist, vanishing in the dark, and the Titanic breathes with you. A drifting palace on black water, unaware, unbothered, unsinkable. For now, maybe tomorrow will be kinder. Maybe the sea will hold its secrets a while longer. Maybe you'll last another day. Maybe.